Hello everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Radiorama, where, as the name implies, I show you how to work on radios and other stuff that works on glowing vacuum tubes from the 1920s through about the 1960s. And today we have this 1946 Farnsworth model ET-060 immediate post-war set, 6-tube set, so a little more added sensitivity. Now, Farnsworth, the guy was pretty much a pioneer when it comes to electronic television. Now, initially there was what we refer to as mechanical television. I'll get into that someday, but basically it was literally a mechanical spinning disc with little holes pricked in it with the light source behind it that would give you a really crude raster. Farnsworth and a few other pioneers came up with electronic television, which is the ability to use, well, a cathode ray tube to get an image, much better quality, much greater raster count, and that's what led to the type of TV that we watch today. It's kind of interesting. This one actually still works. It has an address. Originally was owned by someone called Pearl Baker, 3630 Hilger Street, Detroit, Michigan. Now, I was curious. I looked that up, and there's nothing there anymore. There is a field and a few houses off in the distance, and it's kind of sad because Detroit at one time was one of the most populated cities in the United States, and then starting after the war all the way through the 70s, there was a huge amount of people that moved out of the cities and into the suburbs and away from the city core. And so half the city cleared out. So you had a whole bunch of vacant houses, and a lot of arsons were just coming in and burning the things down. So either a lot of the houses burnt down, or the city paid contractors to come and tear them down. Or, and I'm not sure if this is the case anymore, if you wanted to move into one of these abandoned houses, the city'd sell it to you for $1. I've heard Detroit's kind of on a little bit way on the up and up. I was there about 12 years ago, and I actually got to go to General Motors, which was wonderful as a designer. Getting to seeing the design studio that Harley Earl designed was a dream come true. The people were really nice. You know, I felt the people of Detroit were just fantastic people. But what I saw around in some of the neighborhoods, it looked like World War II. But now that I've yammered on enough about that, I was a little hesitant to work on this at first because the bakelite is kind of hosed. It's not in good shape. There's no way I can save this bakelite. But I think what I can do is give it a paint job. And I've been having issues with paint these days. It seems like there's a quality control issue where the paint is just not laying down flat anymore. So since I know it works, I am going to go ahead and take it out of the cabinet and really, I'm going to dismantle I want to not paint this. I'll take this off, see if I can just clean that up. It's kind of this nice, pleasant beige color, and so are the knobs. And then I'll pick a color. It's either going to be red or blue or something that'll kind of really make that case snap. These did come in painted variations, so I'm not exactly being totally dishonorable to the set's original production. I know some people throw a hissy fit when I do that, but otherwise, I need to save the radio from just being a piece of garbage that no one wants to have in their collection, or even if they're not a radio collector, So let's take it apart. With 6 tubes, I do remember this was quite a bear. There was quite a few capacitors that were inside, so it's a little bit of a slog, but I'll take it out to refresh my memory. The good news also is that it's got a good back. It's not been ripped. It's got this switch here. I'm guessing that's probably for closer or further distance away from the tower. I don't know. Okay, so the innards are out. Jesus, this has the craziest antenna setup here. Kind of wondered, does this pick up shortwave? Didn't look at the vent. Supposedly it does, even though there's probably not a whole heck of a lot on shortwave. In fact, I know there isn't. And for this to pick up anything, it'd have to have a lot more antenna than that, so I'm not concerned about that. Looking under here, it looks like it's been worked on. We have this replacement electrolytic. It's hard to tell what era it is, but I'll probably replace that just the same. Hence why it still works. Most of the time, all you have to do is replace those electrolytics to get the bare minimum operation. I've already removed one of these, but we're going to remove both the glass and this front plastic. It's held in with these 4 screws. And these clips, you just pry them off. You don't have to do it real hard and be gentle. And we're just coming here. And like so, we'll just remove each of these screws. And that whole front end should just come right off. It's too bad, I'm looking in here, the bakelite on the inside looks pretty minty. I'm guessing that this kitchen might have been this radio might have been in a kitchen, and it just got completely saturated with kitchen grease, and just scrub that off of there. It would ruin the bakelite, so it's kind of a catch-22. Likewise, I'm going to take the dog glass out and put it away for safekeeping. If I break this project is over. Now that's fascinating. That's like rubber bib washers off of a sink. Now, I'm not sure if that's from the factory or if someone did that later. Put that over here away from everything else. So now let's see if this will pop right out. Yeah, it does. So now we got both these pieces out. Just to see if I can save it, I am going to go over and just see if I can wash this stuff off gently, see if the bakelite underneath is at all salvageable. But I don't think it is. Once you ruin this casting, there's not a whole hell of a lot you can do about it. Well, yeah, the bakelite finish on it was hosed. As soon as I got it wet, like I could tell, like, finish has been gone for a long time, and the kitchen grease just disguised a little bit. But what I've done is I scrubbed the crap out of it after making that discovery. And then I let it dry, and then I wiped it down several times with rubbing alcohol. I told you I've been having issues with spray paint lately, but I remember one of you guys, I can't remember which one of you fellers left this comment for me, but they said, put your can in a little bit of hot water for a few minutes. I probably should not advise to do that, because it says specifically on the back of the can, do not expose to high heat or flame. Anyway, that feels just a little warm now. I think that's probably okay. Like I said, don't do what you just saw. Hence the warning at the beginning of all my videos, because sometimes I do stupid shit. Possibly dangerous. Alright. Get my hands dry from using that thing, then we'll proceed to paint. It's a little windy today, so this might be a little more of a challenge. Alright, here goes nothing. Generally what I try to do is not stop at any one place and make pretty wide sweeping strokes. I'm a little hesitant here. This brand of spray paint I've been having lots of issues with lately, but maybe it'll work this time. So here we go. Yeah, you see, you just want to kind of, I don't know what's up with these tips on these guys. Like, the tips on some of this spray paint just love to drip right now, or lately. Beats the hell out of me. It's annoying. You just want to kind of work your way around the whole set. And you don't want to get like, you don't want to spend too much time anywhere. What I'm looking for is, you know, uneven spots. Almost tripped. That would have been disastrous. I'm not talking a lot because it sometimes takes a lot of decent concentration to do this right. Because if you do it wrong, then you're going to have an ugly looking, obviously spray painted radio, and you won't fool anybody. They'll just be like, that looks like some piece of shit spray painted radio. I'm not interested in that. So, I'm just looking to even up the color. Don't have to worry about the stuff where the grill goes, at least where it abuts to, because no one will see that. Alright, I'm going to put the phone down. This is hard for me to do one-handed now. Alright, well that hopefully will hold. The issue I've been having, this new spray paint, you'll put it on and it just looks like amazing. It looks like glass. And you're so confident in yourself that, wow, I did a good job. And you come out and like 10 minutes later, it's like all clouded up. It's hard to describe. It makes a weird texture. So it's pretty hot out here, so I'm hoping that will, I don't know, it seems like when I got a good hot day, the paint lays down easier. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Alright, well, it's time to start the recapping process, which means replacing all these little paper wax capacitors. Most of these guys are leaky, even if the set works, and so your performance will suffer if you don't replace them. There's also a safety factor here that I've talked about many times, which is there's such a thing as a hot chassis, which means you've got, you know, the filaments of all the tubes all lined up, and then one end of the line cord goes directly to the chassis. So that means you would get everything that would come out of the tap, out of the socket or the outlet or whatever. And so even back then the engineers realized, well, that's a stupid design. People are going to kill themselves. So they started putting capacitors between the ground and chassis. Not all of them. Now, some hot sets, like some of the Zenith AM/FM sets, they're hot, but you can't get to the chassis. They're basically isolated physically from the user. That's fine. But this is a floating hot chassis. And I looked at the schematic because this thing is so crammed in there. They're usually up and around here somewhere when where the incoming power is. So I think it's that one, but I can't confirm by seeing its other end. Because these guys are just probably two tie points. It doesn't show up as a tube connection. So to double confirm that, I'll just have to keep digging. I'm going to start replacing these guys, and what I usually do is clip one end at a time, roll it over, see the value, and clip one end of the new cap here, and then clip the other end of this old cap out, and then tie our new cap leads in. I usually don't film this because it's boring, but maybe I'll do a little bit this time since, I don't know, maybe it'll help some of you guys in some way. I don't know if this will work. I've got this camera at a weird angle, so hopefully I won't make a mess of this shot. But what I generally do is, okay, I'll clip like just the very end of that old cap. So I want to make sure that I still have a long enough lead where I can tell myself, that's where it went. Anyway, what do we have here? 0.02 microfarads, 600 volts. Big whoop-de-doo. I have tons of those guys. So here we go. New modern Mylar film capacitor, which will last longer than I will, for sure. And we're just going to attach it, one end, to this old connection. By the way, I'm going to replace, whoever did that, I don't know why you'd do that. Like, they didn't cut, they didn't resolder the leads of the new cord to the location. They just, I don't know, they jerry-rigged it. Oh well. Of course, I didn't get my solder down before I started filming, but anyway, we'll come in here and, you know, get this good and hot, molten basically. You don't want a cold solder joint. It's getting a little bit difficult because my Metcal tip is starting to wear out. I need to order another one. Usually it's blazing hot, but they give me, you know, as much as I do this, I get about 3 or 4 months out of them, and then they're toast. I'm going to pull off this insulation here. And since this is so physically small compared to the old one, we can just very neatly tuck it in here. My big fat fingers get in the way. Alright, crimp that around that end and solder it in like so. And always wiggle your work when you're done, just to make sure that you did a good job soldering that. This one says it's basically half of a tenth, well, 5/10 of a microfarad, or a, damn it, 0.05 microfarads. I'm not good with my math, and it's late in the day. Anyway, same thing here. I'm going to snip one end of this 0.05 rated capacitor. And where does that go? Well, that's not ground. And I don't suspect this is ground either. We'll have to see. But let's go ahead and replace that with a nice new shiny capacitor. Brilliant yellow color. Alright. This one's going to be a little bit more of a pain because we're going to have to do some careful rearranging here. So again, we'll make a little loop like that. And we're going to touch it up with a little solder here. Don't be afraid to use the solder. Just flood the area. Now we'll clip that excess out of there, and let's cut the other end of this capacitor down there. I'll just bend this back a little bit and pull it through. A lot of people are tempted just to run things over things instead of under. But you start screwing around with where your capacitors are. I know I keep on bumping this with my head. I'm sorry, guys. The more you move stuff around, you can potentially affect your radio signal, which would defeat the purpose of rebuilding this set in the first place. Alright, sometimes you just, if I can't bend things around things, I'll just get it close enough. Let me take my stupid hat off. I keep on hitting this thing with the bill of my baseball cap. Again, we'll check that connection. This is the one. This is the one that makes me think it's grounded. See, we got this wire that's here. Where does that go? That goes there. And that goes there. Oh, it's so buried in here, I can't tell. Ooh, looky here. I think I just found the cap. This is the grounding cap. Now, this big fat guy here, that is the grounding cap. Obvious. It's the biggest one here, and we got all kinds of other things going to ground. And that subsequently, where does that go? That's it. That's going to the terminal strip going to chassis ground. So that's it. Good. Feel better. I'll do one more, then I'll... How much time have I been recording here? 5 minutes. It's kind of hard to see what's going on in there too with this lame light. Alright. Let's get this one right here. Again, 0.05 microfarads, 200 volts. So let's get, again, another modern capacitor. And pull the old insulation off of that thing there, and we will choose to reuse it because it's in good shape. Just thread that through. Then we will wrap this around this lead up here. Come on now, get in there. All right. And solder that like so. Trim the excess. And attach to the other side, which is down in this area. Again, we're just going to wrap this around the stub of that old lead. Some people insist for some reason on desoldering everything, and you just run the risk of damaging components when you do that, especially those domino caps. The domino mica caps do not like being twisted and torqued around, so word of the wise, just use a little stub like that. So now we've got 3 of the however many capacitors we have left. There's quite a few actually. There's 1, 2, 3. Well, that's not a cap, that's a coil. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more caps. Not horrific, definitely not as bad as a Philco for sure. Well, I'm part of the way through the capping job, and I just installed the grounding cap. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I want to make sure this actually still works. So, give it a test fire here. I just saw the flash of the pilot light do its thing. Now, why I have it sitting on its edge like this, I don't know. Whatever. I know this is the band switch, so it's either going to be on shortwave or AM. Watch it not work. Not exactly very sensitive at all. How curious. Seems like it took forever to warm up too. Something's funny. Let me turn it up right. So, let's take a wild guess. Oscillator's out. I mean, it wants to pick up something, but it ain't. That makes me think again it's the oscillator. Again, we barely tested this thing when it came in. It was like, well, noise comes out of it. It must work. But I think the next thing in order is to test the tubes. Well, one of the 12 SK7s is acting weird. Like, basically, it's not stable. I'm not sure if you can pick that up. When I first started it, the needle was just like basically going back and forth. It's trembling like that. There's 2 tubes in here that are really sick. One of the 12 SK7s and one of the 12 SQ7. In fact, I'll be honest, every tube in here has tested like it's been beat to within millimeters of its poor life. So the radio's just freaking tired. So we need to get some transplants. So I'm going to start off with 2 12 SK7s and a 12 SQ7. Okay, so the issue The issue was indeed we had two 12S K7s and a 12S Q7. It's still taking a long ass time to warm up, so I'm thinking either the rectifier or the output tube might also be super tired. So I'll test those guys last. Alright, let's get those guys out.
5 shutout innings for the rookie John Winkowski and his second baseman, Democrat Joe Cunningham, who will face current governor. Action of your favorite health store.
We're getting better. I mean, you gotta remember, like, most of the shitty old wax caps are still inside there, and I haven't cleaned the volume pot. But anyway, after I checked everything out, basically everything except the rectifier, which was 35Z5, and output, which is 35L6. All 4 of the other tubes were gasping for air, so they've all been replaced. Naturally, the performance is probably going to improve once I replace most of the rest of those nasty old leaky capacitors. Clean the volume pot, and then we may even have to tweak these IF and RF cans to do a little bit of a generic realignment. Anyway, I'm going to replace a few more, and that's probably going to be it for this evening. I'm actually real happy because most of my paint jobs do not turn out well with this kind of spray paint I've been using lately, but this looks about as perfect as can be. No runs, complete gloss, no orange peel or whatever you call it, no wrinkling. I think it'll work. Welcome to day 2 working on the Farnsworth, and what I did is I went over to the museum and I got actual known good 12SK7 and 12SQ7 tubes in the hope that, you know, the performance wasn't terrible yesterday. Granted, it's not recapped yet fully, but I wanted to see if the performance could just be improved just a little bit more.
Why? Because you really don't care.
Special ceremony.
I'm great, John. Fire away.
Head to T-Mobile, where you may be eligible to receive.
Huge difference. Now, the thing is, as I said yesterday, this thing's still got a bunch of nasty old leaky capacitors inside, and so I should replace the rest of them. We have 1 up here, and then 3 down here, so that shouldn't take too terribly long. This electrolytic, it looks more recent. It's probably okay. I'm going to test a B+ on it just to make sure, but I think we're probably good there. Let me flip this chassis over so I can get to the majority of the rest of these caps easier. We got 2 here. 1 has been clearly leaking substances out of the back or bottom of it. Let's see, that's a 1, 2.01 microfarad caps going from output to one of the RF tubes. So anyway, whatever that does, we'll replace these last 3. Actually, there's 4. There's another one tucked under there. That probably goes to, might go to volume pot. This is not an easy to work on chassis. It's just really deep and crammed. Alright, I've recapped it and I want to show you guys something. This kind of underlies why it's pretty important to often check the work of the previous person in there, because when I was about to, I was wondering why did they not solder the new leads of the plug directly to the connections down here versus attaching it to bits of the old cord. You can see here they didn't solder, so they twisted this together. And I thought, well, if they did it there, no, surely not. They did, yes, they twisted the electrolytic capacitor leads together with no solder. So now I don't trust that capacitor because I don't see any written things on the side indicating what it is or what values it might be, unless it's wrapped up in tape. But I think I'm going to look up the schematic and replace those electrolytics anyway. Who knows what kind of thing they put in there. So, whatever. It's just a little bit of work. I looked up on the schematic and it's not calling for anything too dramatic here. It's interesting, and it's pretty low capacitance values, but it calls for a 20 and a 30 microfarad cap. So I have some 33 microfarad electrolytics. I'll just stuff 2 of those in there. But yeah, I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to cinch up these cord leads. I'm going to clean the volume pot. Then we'll move on to the top and probably clean and lube the tuning condenser, clean the chassis, and then it's going to be audio input adding time. Alright, so let's recap. And I replaced the weird Cosmic. That is old. Jesus, I'm glad I replaced that. That's probably from the 60s. So those replacements were probably on their way out anyway. In fact, the radio seems like it warmed up a lot quicker. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything.
You're easier and cheaper. It's hard not to keep.
And I guess we disagree.
It takes you a year to investigate something.
Atlanta says monitoring the heat is critical to playground safety.
Bay Area traffic and weather every 15 minutes on Bloomberg 960. We are sponsored by Panera. Eastbound 24 in Oakland.
Very good, strong reception, even in some of the bad areas. So that's that. Super happy, handy dandy radio at this point. And so I'm going to maybe go ahead and add the audio input feature. Looking at the watch, my brother's going to be here in an hour. I'd like to get the pain in the butt stuff wrapped up on this. But all I have to do tomorrow is stick the case back together. So what we're going to do, the last thing, and I need to make sure and unplug the radio before I do anything else. I'll stick my hands in there. So I'm going to add the, as mentioned, audio input feature. And all it's going to mean is that we're going to go in through the top of the volume control. And we'll have the ability to temporarily disable the radio signal, which probably goes to one of these. I'm looking at here. I'm thinking it's got to be this lug, because you have this wire going to, where is that? That looks like one of the transformers. Yes. That is indeed one of the transformers. So the lead on the bottom here, that is our incoming radio signal. Where does this go, though? That goes to a coil. So I might have to actually have both of these leads cut to kill radio temporarily. And what we'll do is we'll run a switch wire that'll go through the back, and that way if you want to reconnect radio, you can. But we want to clear that radio signal out of there so that when we run our audio, it sounds clean. That's really not horribly different than what they did if this set or others like it came with that option. A lot of sets back then did in fact have an audio connection in the back and a switch that did the same thing for running a record player. We're just going to add that feature, but we're also going to add a level of safety that doesn't come with this era, which is essentially we're going to use an electrical isolation transformer to run the audio through first before we get to the volume pot. That's important. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I need to go get the components to do the job in the first place. Okay, so the audio input is installed. We have this isolation transformer. The bottom part is secondary, and the other side is primary. Primary is 120 volts in, 12 volts out, which is primary in, 12 volts out. And that's all that is. You could use a wall wart, it's the same thing. But we're running the audio in through the secondary. The primary then goes to the top and bottom of the volume pot. I split the right and left channels through a pair of resistors. You can get true mono. And we have a little suppressor capacitor in between the capacitor and, not the capacitor, the volume pot and the transformer. That'll preserve the set's automatic gain control feature without getting all squealy. I have disconnected one lead, my first suspicion, which was coming off the IF transformer. That does completely disconnect the radio signal. I'll have to double confirm that. Let me turn the radio down. I mean the Bluetooth down. No, that really truly did kill the radio signal. You know, I have to crank it up as loud as it'll go to pick up like even a murmur. So that's good. So what we'll do is we'll put a switch wire that goes through the back. We want to make it as short as possible. This is what... Where'd it go? There it is. Well, shoot. I put my wire somewhere. You don't need much. There's hardly any current or voltage on that. And so we'll have a little switch in the back so the future user can flip that thing. Turn the radio back on. Most people buy these from this never listen to the radio because it's not a lot of good AM radio around here. Anyhow, let me button this guy up. I put the switch wire in the back. I did that in 15 minutes. Huh. All right. I think we're getting close to putting it back together. All right, so now we have the radio cleaned up, all the little bearings and everything lubricated. We have the switch coming out to reconnect the radio signal. It's time to do a reassembly. All right, so she's done. I think it came back together pretty well, and I do think the finish does look believable on it. It doesn't look like a shitty spray paint job. I feel pretty good about that. Anyway, I've got my Bluetooth running through it.
My baby done me wrong, I'm about to lose my mind. I don't care if the sun don't shine, I'm gonna ease.
There's a little switch in the back. Just realized I put this thing back in the case without cleaning the volume pot. Oh well, I'll do it tomorrow. Good news, it seems like it's playing happily, merrily away, and should make someone in the future very happy for many more years. It's good that it has a new home after basically coming out of a home that no longer exists. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching, and until the next time something comes across the workbench, I'll see you guys next time.